you very much, Madam Chair. We appreciate your leadership through this process, and welcome to everyone. Um, we look forward to another stimulating and instructional, educational conversation tonight, consistent with our theme to educate, engage, and empower. I maintain that homelessness is a dynamic issue. It is not static. If you thought you understood it and we were standing 10 years ago in the midst of the crisis and thought you would give a presentation today about homelessness and not having updated your knowledge of this ever evolving crisis, you would be significantly out of touch or irrelevant. So the role of the working group of the Empowerment Congress is to bring in the best and the brightest presenters, thinkers, providers, listeners, learners, doers, activists, to see if we can ultimately make a difference uh, by supporting each other, learning from each other, and confronting that which is the defining crisis that confronts us in the city, the county, the state, and the nation. Um, that was the case 10 years ago, and it's the case today. So once again, thank you. We're delighted that you're here and look forward to the presentation. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. What you say just continually rings truer and truer. And so we are grateful to have our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group and Dialogue on Homelessness. At our last meeting on October 9th, we did just that. We had Ann Sawyer and her amazing team at the Institute for Nonviolence Los Angeles and Days of Dialogue. They hosted a dialogue for our EC Homelessness Working Group. Out of that dialogue, we had some great harvesting and are always grateful when we're able to provide a space to dialogue on this crisis. Um, Today, I am very excited that while continuing to learn more about homelessness and the various populations, especially affected by it, our fellow Angelinos, and solutions to address homelessness, I am so excited to introduce Miss Erika Hartman to everyone this evening. Erika is the Chief Executive Officer at SPY, Safe Place for Youth, and has been leading the agency and their youth, transition age youth homelessness initiatives for, I think, upwards of 4 years now. Erica's been in the nonprofit space, especially here in Los Angeles and homeless services, for upwards of 15 years. A lot of Erica's work has focused on serving our Angelinos experiencing homelessness and our under resourced youth. Erica has been a huge champion for change and services and mitigating barriers for our Angelino youth in the space of not only homeless services, but also gang reduction and intervention. Erica has also been fantastic with interventions for women's homelessness. So I know I'm not going to be able to do it all justice, Erica, but a quick snapshot, I guess we could say, is part of the timeline before joining SPY as the CEO in 2021. Erica was Chief Program Officer at Downtown Women's Center on Skid Row. Prior to that, Erica was also involved with some legislation work with the National Alliance to End Homelessness. She also served as Chief Program Officer for Allies for Every Child. And before that, I believe oversaw some juvenile justice programming at Children's Hospital here in Los Angeles. So Erica serves on various boards as well and committees. And so without any further ado, one, I would like to warmly thank and introduce and turn it over to you, Miss Erika Hartman. And I'm so grateful I also get to call you a friend. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. I have a little PowerPoint that I can share here. Um, Bear with me, it's gonna take me a minute to make it full screen. Do that. There we go. Can everybody see that? Are we okay? Okay.
Yeah, good.
Yes, thank
Perfect. Thank you so much. So as Rhea said, I am Erika Hartman, CEO of Safe Place for Youth, where our mission is to prevent and end youth homelessness through supportive services, housing opportunities, community collaboration, and advocacy. Let's see. So a little bit about youth homelessness in Los Angeles before I talk specifically about the work that we're doing. Young people who are unhoused experience that differently than other populations. And one of the things that we talk about in terms of youth homelessness is that it's not a characteristic of a subpopulation, it's a stage of life for all populations. And this is really something that we try to underscore in our advocacy work and conversation around youth homelessness, because sometimes the urgency of addressing this issue gets lost, and it gets sort of parsed out and populations get pulled in different directions for resources, for family homelessness versus chronic homelessness versus domestic violence services. And what we try to remind people is that all these folks were young people at some point in their life. And when you look at the adult chronic homelessness population, we find that over 50% of them had their first experience of homelessness as a youth. And so that's a reminder to us about, whatever demographic population of the unhoused community that people are focused on, we have a really significant opportunity to prevent long-term adult chronic homelessness if we address youth homelessness. And so on any given night, there are over 3,000 young people in Los Angeles who are experiencing homelessness. This population is incredibly vulnerable, and in particular to people that are trying to exploit them. And we, want to emphasize the importance of their unique needs, the hurdles that they're facing, and how the strategies that come together to support them differ. One of the things in particular that it really matters with regards to youth homelessness is that a lot of young people don't enter adult services because of concerns about their safety. They're also facing the hurdle of building trust with service providers. Many of them have experienced abuse and exploitation by people who they trusted. And so adults in their lives. And so when they're coming into services, a lot of times they are very reasonably wary of service providers who are trying to help and saying that they can be trusted. And one of the ways in which we at Safe Place for Youth try to bridge this trust is with other youth who have come through our programs and are now on our team. So they can communicate directly to the young person about the benefits of services and the service providers who stood by them and walked alongside them through their challenges. So at Safe Place for Youth, we serve young people who are 12 to 25. The majority are experiencing the lack of a supportive social network. This is the number one thing that's identified. We say that young people are one argument away from the street, which means that, they don't have the resources, they don't necessarily have the life experience to help them if they are kicked out of their home. They don't have many of them even a bank account. And so if there was one person who in their life, just one caring, loving, caring adult who could have given them support, that would have been the thing that could have prevented their homelessness. Over a third of the young people who are experiencing homelessness come from the foster care system, and Los Angeles has one of the largest foster care systems in the country. And so, part of our work in preventing homelessness is to try to disrupt that pipeline and come up with strategies and interventions to catch young people before they fall into chronic homelessness. We know that disproportionality and discrimination are factors in this as well. There are a significant percentage of young people experiencing homelessness who identify as LGBTQ+, and the majority of young people that we serve at Safe Place for Youth are people of color. This is, a text-heavy slide, but meant to be illustrative of how our theory of change works. And, that's predicated on this building of a trusting relationship, that the right path for young people is the path that they identify, and that, young people come to us sometimes needing just, education and employment support. Perhaps they need housing, but they are set up in terms of a job. So we really try to meet young people where they are, and that starts with engaging young people through street outreach, our trust building that happens at our drop-in center, really low stakes activities like healing arts, coming for meals, providing these basic needs resources that help young people feel like there is some level of consistency and understanding from their providers. As much as possible, we try to offer light touch interventions like problem solving, where we talk through, could we provide some mediation with a family member or roommate? Could we provide a little bit of rent for somebody to let a youth stay with them for a period of time? And for youth who have, greater level needs, maybe who don't have a roof over their head, for example, we try to move them into shelter, transitional housing, and then ultimately into permanent housing. We provide the array of wraparound supportive services, mental health counseling, substance use programming, support for our young pregnant and parenting families. And then we hopefully are able to connect young people to either a lease of their own in affordable housing, permanent supportive housing for young people who need that, and sometimes even family reunification if we can find a family member, even in another state who can step up and support them. And then we work with that young person to reunify with that family member wherever they may be. Advocacy is a big part of our work, and I'll talk more about that later, but it connects the preventing and ending aspects of our mission. So really the hub of our work starts in our drop-in center, again, providing those basic needs resources, starting to build connections. This year we have extended our drop-in center services to go into the evening and on weekends in recognition that the hope is that young people are able to engage in education and employment and other activities during the day and may need supportive services in the evening or on the weekend. Our drop-in center is located in Venice. This is where our organization started. It was founded by a group of volunteers who were passing out basic needs resources on the boardwalk, and then progressively connecting young people to resources. And in that time, our founder identified that there really were no supportive services for young people in West Los Angeles. And so we sort of grew from there. Into our various different housing programs, and have started, as the need has grown, to increase our supportive services throughout LA County. So these are some of the supportive services that we provide and our impact during the year. We, see a number of young people that self-identify as needing mental health support. Many of them experience traumatic experiences that were the cause of their homelessness, and then during their time on the street, especially if they were unsheltered, were exposed to additional compounding traumas. And so, we want to make sure that they have access to non-traditional healing through arts and pottery and music and garden, and that for those who would be interested in connecting directly to a traditional therapy, psychiatry model, that we are able to offer that as well. We also work in partnership with Venice Family Clinic, who provides our on-site medical services, and UCLA Dental, who provides our dental services. Um, you know, empowerment is obviously, a common objective and thread throughout. We want to make sure that young people feel set up to succeed and also know that we will, be there to support them along the way. One of the ways in which we do this is through our youth advocacy program, where we work with young people to develop their leadership skills, their public speaking skills, because they are really the most compelling when it comes to talking about youth homelessness. There's really nothing as powerful as hearing from a young person about, what they have gone through and what the support that they receive has meant to them. And I'll talk more specifically about the advocacy later, but in terms of where we've been able to make policy and legislative change, it's really been the young people's voice that has made that difference. As part of our non-traditional healing, we have our community garden, and through the garden, we provide paid internships to young people. So it's really a therapeutic activity for them to be outdoors in nature, learning to grow and cook and build community. But it's also an opportunity for them to start to build a resume where they can, have a reference, note that they worked for the organization, start to engage our community volunteers who come through. They put on various different types of events. They create products for the social enterprise. And so again, really trying to create a low barrier opportunity for them to move into more traditional employment opportunities, either through our education and employment program. Many of the young people go on to pursue culinary certificates in particular. So we just really want to help create that foundation. And, much like housed youth, we, are working with them through the different milestones of development. So, meeting their basic needs and then progressively working from there to help them become sustainably housed and have the resources to carry that forward once we're able to step back. So SPY has a number of different housing programs and different housing models. We currently have 6 housing sites. We are about to open 2 more. One is a 60-bed shelter in West Hollywood, and the other is going to be a 22-bed shelter in Mar Vista. The types of housing that we offer are emergency housing for shorter term stays, transitional housing where young people can live for up to 2 years, and we work with them on their education and employment. They're there rent free, so there's an opportunity for them to save a little bit of resources. And then we work with them to move out potentially into what's called time-limited subsidy housing. So we'll provide some initial rent, some security deposit, and then they have a case manager that will work with them for 2 years. And in that model, young people are the leaseholder, and so it is helping them develop the life skills. And you can see some of the young people here on the left who received their keys in their new apartments. There is a portion of young people, about 19%, who do need permanent supportive housing based on a qualifying disability. And so we work with them to get them vouchers. Our new drop-in center actually has permanent supportive housing above it. So there's 20 young people who are supported there by Venice Community Housing that can come downstairs to receive supportive services, to do their laundry, to see their providers. And just recognizing again that different levels of support are needed based on the unique backgrounds of the young people we work with. Another interesting housing model that we have is what we call host homes. And so this is where community members will open up an extra bedroom in their house. Maybe they have an ADU, and we will provide them with a monthly subsidy for a young person to stay there for up to 6 months while we look for a more permanent placement. But this has been a really lovely way for the community to engage and support young people. And has resulted in us having young people housed in various different locations across the county. We also have 2 pregnant and parenting houses for young families, and the young families can reside there also for up to 2 years. And in that time, again, working to help them develop life skills and build resources such that they can sustain housing beyond that time. This is a picture of where our different properties are. We have, again, the majority are over here in West LA, as we've moved progressively east based on, the various different communities of need. The Our Stepping Stones program that's over here in Echo Park was specifically started during the housing cliff. At the end of the pandemic, there were 1,000 youth who were set to age out of the child welfare system without a housing placement. So they had been permitted to remain in the child welfare system longer because of the pandemic. And then when that money ended at the end of the year, there was a real risk that a substantial number of young people were going to fall into homelessness. And so we partnered with the county to stand up an emergency housing emergency shelter for them to move into. And this program evolved into a demonstration project that has continued to today, where if a young person's housing placement falls through on their court date, on their emancipation date as they're leaving foster care, we hold beds available so that we can immediately intake and prevent them from ever experiencing being unsheltered. And that's been enormous for young people because the amount of trauma and the vulnerability that they experience on their first night of being unhoused, really can be determinative of their success rates down the line. So we've been very proud of that program. And, unfortunately, young people do continue to age out every day. And, we're grateful to be able to offer a bed that, the Child Welfare Department of Child and Family Services can call us and let us know they have a young person who, maybe had a fight with the boyfriend or girlfriend they were planning to stay with, and that we can ensure that that doesn't result in them becoming homeless. So this is a little bit about our pregnant and parenting programs. We do see a lot of young parents. We have one primary drop-in center where young folks come, and we regularly have young parents with babies under the age of 5. And so this, they're facing so many hurdles just being an unhoused young person. And we really try to wrap our arms around them as a family because it's an opportunity for us to prevent, multi-generations of homelessness if we can adequately support the family. So again, providing them with their basic needs resources, helping them develop into, parents and supportive adults for their children, and then also connecting them to resources to sustain their housing. And then again, back to our advocacy work. So we work with our Spy Squad youth to have conversations with electeds. We took a bunch of young people to Capitol Hill with us to advocate at the federal level. Some of the pictures here are from our advocacy to the Board of Supervisors in the last year. There was a significant amount of funding that was set to be cut that had previously supported youth homeless services. So the voters had voted to tax themselves a half cent in what was called Measure A that was intended to provide support for homeless services across the county. And the budget that was presented had cut all the funding for youth homelessness. And so we brought our community together to write letters, provide public comment, and really urge the Board of Supervisors to restore that funding. And, gratefully, our Board of Supervisors heard us and unanimously voted to restore that funding. So that was a really, proud and grateful victory that we had that, we really, attribute to the young people and their voices in moving that forward. And so our advocacy continues around increasing this awareness of youth homelessness and the unique needs of young people, ensuring that there is dedicated funding for these types of services. So California, the state funding sets aside 10% for young people, but that's not the case for other funding streams. And so we continue to advocate that local electeds and at the federal level that funding be dedicated and set aside so that young people don't get swept up into the adult homeless system. We had surveyed our young people to find out if there was only adult shelter available, would they take a referral to an adult shelter? And 60% let us know that they would prefer a tent. And taking their chances on the streets, and that was really eye-opening to us, the number of young people that felt unsafe or unable to access adult services. So we really want to make sure that that's understood, because a lot of the young people, the 18 to 25, folks are sometimes lose sight of the importance of youth-specific services and will make a case for that young people can technically access adult services, but what we know is that their outcomes are worse and that many of them are unable to do that safely, and that even as we're focused on addressing the greater visible homelessness, adult homeless numbers, that we have to remember that part of that starts with the prevention of chronic homelessness and supporting young people. We've also, because youth homeless service providers are often smaller organizations, Safe Place for Youth is the only exclusively youth serving organization that has an advocacy arm. We've been doing a lot of work to amplify the voice of youth providers and uplift the voice of young people, because we have, there's lots of competing priorities in the homeless services system. Somehow youth providers' voice has gotten lost in that. And so we've seen a system that is not, built to support the work that we're doing and doesn't necessarily meet the needs of young people. So trying to be part of that response system as it's being developed, in particular as the county is building out their own homelessness department, has been really crucial. And just making sure that the strategies that are being identified and funded are appropriate for young people. So one example from this most recent point in time homeless count was that we saw a reduction in adult homelessness, but the youth homelessness plateaued. And so we try to remind people that that means that one size does not fit all. If the same interventions that worked for adults worked for youth, then we would have seen a decrease in youth homelessness. And one example is that there's been a lot of attention focused on sheltering people out of encampments, which is absolutely needed and super important, and also does not reach youth because most youth do not live in encampments. Because of their vulnerability to exploitation, young people live in abandoned buildings, on rooftops, under bushes, which makes it hard to have an accurate count of the total number of youth, but also means that if we're solely focused on outreach to encampments, then we're going to miss a lot of young people that need help too. So here are some opportunities for how folks who might be interested can get involved. I recommend following us at Safe Place for Youth. We're on all the socials and post lots of things, in particular on Instagram. We have some current advocacy that we're doing around La Casa, which is the county entity that is going to administer prevention and affordable housing. And so right now we're in a push to provide education to the folks that are on the La Casa board about youth homelessness and really encourage them to set aside funding and housing units for young people and potentially to develop housing at the community colleges. And, again, lots of other opportunities to get involved, and you can always learn more about us at safeplaceforyouth.org.
Awesome, 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 Erika. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's so special to learn more and more about all of the amazing programs, services, and advocacy that SPY is doing. I feel like every time I hear from you, I hear just about the expansion of all that you're doing, and the impact really shows. So thank you. If it's okay, we'd like to open it up for some questions. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Erika? Yes, Cheryl, go for it.
I had them all lined up here, my comment. I'm like, well, let me hold on to them. Thank you. Um, what an amazing program. So
Thank you.
as you heard in the beginning, I worked for DCFS for many years. And so listening to you just brought back all of these memories and challenges and things that we dealt with at that time. My first question is, what would disqualify a youth from being eligible for your program? And then I'd like to know, do you accept dual jurisdiction for youth that are probation and foster youth? And then lastly, um, do you serve undocumented youth?
We serve all youth, and so we do serve undocumented youth, probation youth, youth who've been in foster care. Our housing is specifically for 18 and older. So when we are getting young people directly from the child welfare system, they're usually 18, aging out at 18 or 21. But we also do have a specialized case manager who is for probation and DCFS, and because they have unique resources and requirements that they're trying to meet, this person is really charged with understanding all those resources and making sure that they're getting appropriately connected. So yes, we welcome any young person to our drop-in center, and we'll connect them to, especially where there's those specific targeted resources.
Thank you. I just have one follow-up if that's possible.
Yeah.
Only if it's 30
there-
seconds or less, Cheryl, but
It's
yeah.
going to be it's only going to be 10 seconds.
Okay. Yeah.
So back in the day, they had like LAYN, the LA Youth Network. They had Covenant House. They had Phoenix House. They had Glass, which I know is gone. My friend's place. Do you still are? I don't know if or any of those organizations still available. If they are, do all of you talk to each other and refer? If one place is full, do you refer between in your network?
Yes, and I believe most of them are still around. I know the youth network is now Youth Emerging Stronger, but we are part of a number of different coalitions, and a lot of those are really centralized in Hollywood. And so we do track data to see who young people who maybe are going between. But yeah, we are absolutely always a resource to each other, and yeah, grateful for that partnership.
Thank you so much for your question, Cheryl. Erika, I think it's so true, especially in the youth space. I noticed that as the youth services system has developed, that collaboration has been crucial. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we have a few questions in the chat, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read them out.
Sure.
From Bishop Byron. Great work, Erika. Thank you for all of your hard work. I have two questions. I'll start with number one, and then we'll go into two, if that's okay. Number
Sure.
one, research shows a disproportionate number of African American and Latino youth in foster care later become involved in the justice system. How is safe place for youth using data to disrupt this foster care to prison pipeline?
Yeah. Well, I think, part of what we're trying to do is to catch people early, and to be able to provide mentorship and support, immediately when they come to us. We do provide legal assistance. We have partners that provide legal assistance, and recognizing that there are all these different stressors and compound traumas that folks are facing, and just trying to understand and meet them where they are. um, Data is really crucial to us in terms of understanding who's coming in and what works, and we do you know take in all the research that is coming out and being available. There's a really great article that just came out from Rand that looks at the overlap of foster and homeless youth, and really identifies some key areas for intervention. But we do some of our own data collection as well to understand the population that we're serving and to hear from them directly about their needs.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I imagine your previous work with, gang reduction and interventions for
Yeah.
youth gang reduction probably also overlap here. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
awesome. Bishop Byron had a follow-up. His second question was, given that African American and Latino young men represent over 72% of the prison population, what culturally responsive approaches has SPY developed to meet the needs of these populations before crisis hits?
Yeah. Well, I'm really proud of, the workforce that we have. We are 45% people with lived experience of homelessness. 15% are folks who were either in the juvenile justice system themselves, or the adult justice system. Another 15% are folks who were previously in foster care. So I feel like, we do a good job of reflecting the population that we're serving. We also, as I mentioned, hire young people who've gone through our program. So I feel like this helps inform our work. And, we continue to get feedback. One of the questions on our satisfaction survey for youth is if we met their cultural needs. And I think that that's helped. Yeah, that's helped, keep our, continue to take the temperature of how we're doing. We provide training to our staff, and our Spy Squad young people also kind of drive our Heritage Month celebrations and things like that. So we're hearing directly from the young people about what would help create an affirming environment for them.
That's amazing. I mean, talk about, really living lived experience or harnessing it. That's phenomenal. Thank you. And I noticed Bishop Byron also said
Mm,
thank you in the chat.
thank you.
I think we have time for a few more questions. I know you gave us a really great and a really great presentation, and we've held your time for a bit. So,
No worries.
but thank you.
Appreciate it.
Pardon?
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to share more. So.
No, Erica, it's our pleasure. Thank you. Elahe?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you have any relation with Cal State LA or Northridge, the CSU system in LA County, for any program for higher education? Like I was at Cal State Fullerton, and we had Guardian Scholar that every year we were selecting certain youth from homeless shelters or other agencies and providing a scholarship, and basically we had a proud graduation from four-year college.
Yeah, yeah. So not those two universities specifically, but we partner with UCLA and Santa Monica City College, especially. We have campus peer navigators. So they often work with young people who are living in their cars and attending college. And there are a lot of young people who are, in addition to all the things that they're, going through, really pursuing higher education. And so we do work with the Guardian Scholars there, as well as their associated students groups, to make sure that, young people who are identified, that we can get them connected to the gamut of resources that, they may not directly have access to at the university. But, there is a young lady who came to present to our board this week, who was just completing her bachelor's degree and had just been accepted into Teach for America. So just really, really lovely to see people, just rise through and, triumph through all that they've gone through.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So we had a question in the chat about unhoused by youth being alumni college graduates now. And it sounds
Yeah.
like yes,
Yes.
that's awesome, Erica.
Absolutely.
Congratulations to, the SPY team and to the youth, to the young people for their resilience, persistence, and growth.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like it really does take a village, and it's so special that SPY is able to provide that village. And one thing that really resonated for me is on one of your slides, you showed how advocacy is so imperative for both ending homelessness and preventing homelessness. And I think we know that's true for, unhoused Angelinos across all populations. It's really significant, the advocacy, and I hope I'm not butchering the name, but the advocacy advisory council that you all have been able to develop for the young people. I guess one of my questions on that is, in the climate that we're in, like climate such as today, how have you overcome any barriers, either just as a unhoused youth serving agency, and for the youth, it sounds like they continue with their advocacy. And so what are some of, how have they overcome some of the barriers that we see so many of our agencies encountering?
You mean in terms of the challenges with funding, or just sort of the shift in the landscape?
More so the shift in the landscape. I think that
Yeah,
sometimes it seems like people are kind of disheartened or dissuaded. And
yeah.
I see SPIES youth, unhoused and program graduates just continuing with their advocacy. And so I think there are some best practices there that I'd love for us to celebrate and learn about.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we've really seen in the value of this youth leadership board is that they also move into housing and get employed, faster than the young people who don't necessarily participate in that. So I do think that there's a big part of having somebody believe in you and feeling capable that really makes an enormous difference. And the Spy Squad has been really powerful in that regard, because especially when they're able to move legislation, to feel like their voice matters is enormous. And even the young people who don't participate, I think seeing their peers move the needle for this community really, really makes people feel like there's hope. And it is incredibly difficult, as public support has shifted away from the homelessness community. But I think that there's a lot more empathy for young people, and the recognition that we as a society have an obligation to do something for them. This is the next generation, and but for a loving, caring adult in their life, their trajectory would have been different. And so I think for people who've had a loving, caring adult in their life, they know the import of that. And then for people who haven't, also understand, just how challenging it is to navigate life without somebody to guide you, even on those little things. Like, one example that I always share is about this young person who was dumping the whole bag of Tide Pods into his laundry, just because
Oh,
like nobody had ever told him, maybe just one of those. And so there's just little life skills things along the way that you kind of take for granted if you've not had somebody, show you those things. So
yeah.
I think seeing the success, we do lots to like publicly celebrate the success of young people. And I think they see their peers get housed, they see their peers get jobs, they see their peers talking to the board of supervisors, and they are able to see themselves in that too in their future.
Oh, it's wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, I imagine the whole
Um,
bag of Tide Pods might be rough.
yes, I was going to comment. I never knew you weren't supposed to put them all in there. I wonder,
Right?
I wonder why it was so expensive washing my clothes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
at least we know you wash your clothes.
Yes, thanks so much. That was a
They're
setup. That
very
was a
clean.
softball, Vincent. That was a softball. Glad you hit it. Not out of the park, though.
Well, actually, Mr. Harris has a very important question as well. So, Erica, if we may, this will be our last question.
No, I have
Um,
one.
sorry?
I have one after Vincent.
Oh, perfect. All right. Okay, so an and one question as well. So, Mr. Harris, would you like to ask your question, or would you like me to?
You can ask it. I put it in the chat.
Okay, so Mr. Harris asked, how is the federal budget impacting homelessness efforts? And I think I would love to add to that for SPY, especially efforts to support unhoused youth.
Yeah. I I think that this is a particularly dire time in homeless services. We are seeing major funding cuts at all levels. But I think there's a real fear that the federal government is not going to direct funding towards California and LA in particular. And, in particular, with regards to available vouchers, one of the things in the proposal was to substantially reduce the amount of permanent housing. And in LA, so the allocation was going to be cut to between 50 and 30% could be used on permanent housing. And, in Los Angeles, we use 80% towards permanent supportive housing. And those are homes that have people in them now. So if that funding gets cut, all of those people are going to be facing homelessness. So that's one enormous thing that we're really concerned about. Something that we saw that was different in these funding applications was that we were required to have certain programmatic elements that we had not had before. So, for example, in our pregnant and parenting programs, we were required to encourage young people to marry the father of their child, essentially, to provide education around marriage and the benefits of marriage. We were also required to seek an MOU, an information sharing agreement with law enforcement, and we're given very short timelines to do that. So things like that created barriers to providers in Los Angeles applying, and there were lots of youth providers who just
Absolutely.
didn't even apply. So I do think that the lack of those resources is a real impact. And then even youth homeless service providers are experiencing immigration raids. And so, that is a real fear. A lot of us have had to change our policies and practices around having our doors open, that, we're trying to do what we need to do to keep the environment safe, even for the undocumented community, but also to not have agents in general come in and, create unsafe situations in our drop-in
Sure.
centers, in our shelters, and so on. So I think, it's had an enormous impact in lots of different ways.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Is there, well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor for the last question, if that's okay. Supervisor?
Yeah, I want to say, on behalf of everyone, thanks very much, Erika, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Fully informative in a variety of ways. um, I continue to learn more and more about this crisis, and I wish for us to have the disposition of students and active learners on this subject, if we are really to make uh, a modicum of a difference. It did catch my attention when I think you made the remark that the public sentiment, I'm going to rephrase this to some extent, but I hope it doesn't do violence to your point. The public sentiment pertaining to homelessness has um, been diminished, or there's a palpable stepping back from the embrace, the advocacy, and the push for dealing with this set of very real, some would argue, intractable. I don't know that I'm persuaded by that. It's a way to cop out, I think. Uh, but maybe you could say more about that if I heard you correctly. Um, and in your response, maybe the answers could address what you think the contributing factors are to this stepping back. When you compare it to 10 years ago, uh, let me say it colloquially, we were getting at it. And people felt it, from Proposition Triple H to Measure H to alignment, unprecedented alignment between the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. Fast forward to where we are. now, and we have, in some ways, more money than we ever had to address the crisis. And yet, I'm struck by your comment that the energy that surrounds the issue has waned.
Yeah.
Did I read you correctly?
No, that's exactly it, Supervisor. We have at one point had enormous public support for doing this work, funding this work. We're very grateful that Measure A passed
Yeah.
because that's going to be the major source of funding. But we haven't done enough to address the inflow into homelessness and to find sustainable solutions for people to move out of it. And so I think there's lots of different things that are contributing to that. I think one is that people continue to see the encampments, they continue to see the human suffering and are very frustrated by that and feel that the money that they are putting towards this work is not having a visible impact. And I completely understand that, and I understand the fatigue. It is very hard to see so many people suffering. And I think what we also have to recognize is that we are moving people out, but just not as fast as they are falling into homelessness. We are housing people, but we are not setting them up to necessarily sustain that housing in a society where the safety net is not strong enough to catch them if, they have one setback. And I think that, the cost of housing, the cost of living continues to go up. People are understandably frustrated with the cost to create permanent supportive housing. And there are lots of reasons for that. But, I do understand that when people look at the cost to develop permanent supportive housing and maybe the cost of their own home, that comparison is challenging. And there's lots of things that go into that. And really, I think the intention there is for accountability to the public. And, that's why, there are so many processes that are required to develop that type of housing. And then, complying with prevailing wage and things like that. But, I think these are all factors that contribute. And I think we have to also look at strategies that work because, as we're talking about, 50% of the chronically homeless could have been supported as a youth and not been in that situation that we can't, it's like only focusing on the emergency room, right? Like if we only focus on the emergency room, we're going to be focusing on the emergency room forever. And I think that that's what's hard because elected officials are hearing from the community about the encampment on the corner, about the tents in their yard, and there's not always enough attention or pressure put towards these issues that are affordable housing on the housing side and preventing the inflow into homelessness. So I think those are contributing factors. I also think that part of what we're seeing now is the effect of people having been on the street longer. And the longer that people are unhoused, the more compound mental health challenges, the harder to move out of homelessness. And over time, as this issue goes unaddressed, it is going to get worse and harder to solve. And so we need to keep the momentum and remind people of the successes because what they're seeing is not necessarily a reflection of all the unhoused community. They're seeing the people that have been the hardest to reach, the hardest to help, and who are struggling the most because of the time that they've been unhoused. So I think there's lots of things that go into it. It gives me a little bit of hope that voters were willing to continue with Measure A, but I completely get that we need to make meaningful progress, and homelessness is not good for the housed community and it's not good for the unhoused community. So we're all in agreement on that, and we need to see our common ground and how addressing this issue is in the best interest of everybody.
Well, thanks very much for your response. I look forward to a continuing dialogue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supervisor, for that question, and Erica for, sharing your sentiments in that response as well. I mean, I can't thank you enough for all the work that you're doing to champion change for our unhoused youth and the phenomenal impact you are having at SPY, that your team is having, the programs are having. I just, I can't gush enough and thank you enough. For me, I truly believe that we inherit the land from our ancestors but we're borrowing it from our youth. And so to see someone, a leader like yourself, and an agency like SPY that really lives that, gives me hope. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too.
Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.